When you hear the phrase forms of government, what do you picture? A king on a throne? A president giving a speech? You're right on both counts. A form of government is just the system a country uses to make its rules and manage itself. To understand any government, you just have to ask two simple questions. First, who's in charge? Is it one person, a small group, or everybody? And second, how much power do they really have? Can they do whatever they want, or are there rules they have to follow? But let's back up. Why do we even have governments in the first place? Imagine your school with no principal, no teachers, and no rules. It would be total chaos, right? Nobody would learn anything, and the biggest kid would probably just take everyone's lunch money. That's the first job of government, to provide order and make laws so we can live together peacefully. It also provides security, like police to protect us at home and a military to protect us from outside threats. And it provides public services we all share, like roads to drive on, schools to learn in, and parks to play in. The easiest way to tell governments apart is by answering that first big question: who holds the power? Think of it like a video game. Is there one player who controls everything? Or is it a cooperative game where a small team is in charge? Or is it a massive online game where all the players vote on the rules? This gives us our three basic categories. When one person rules, it's an autocracy. When a small group rules, it's an oligarchy. And when the people have the power, it's a democracy. Let's start with rule by one, or autocracy. The word auto means self, so this is a government run by oneself with total, absolute control. This is the oldest, and for a long time, the most common form of government in human history. In an autocracy, the ruler's power is unlimited. They don't have to listen to a parliament, they don't have to follow a constitution, and they certainly don't have to listen to the people. There are two major ways this shows up in the world: a monarchy and a dictatorship. The first type of autocracy is a monarchy. This is probably what you think of when you hear king or queen. In a monarchy, the right to rule is based on family. It's inherited, meaning it's passed down from parent to child. If you're the oldest son of a king, you'll probably be the next king. It doesn't matter if you're smart, kind, or qualified. Your power comes from your bloodline. This was the system for almost all of European history, with pharaohs, emperors, and czars all being different types of monarchs. Now, this is a really important distinction. Not all monarchies are the same. In an absolute monarchy, the king or queen is all-powerful. They make the laws, they are the judge, they control everything. Think of King Louis XIV of France, who supposedly said, "I am the state." But today, most monarchies are constitutional monarchies. Think of the United Kingdom or Japan. They still have a queen or an emperor, but that person is a symbol. The real power is held by an elected parliament and a prime minister, and everyone, including the monarch, must follow the country's constitution. The other type of rule by one is a dictatorship. A dictator is also one person with total control, but they don't get their power from their family. A dictator almost always takes power by force. This might be a military coup, where a general uses the army to take over the government. Sometimes a dictator can be elected by promising to fix all the country's problems. But then they change the rules, cancel future elections, and take control of the media and the courts. They stay in power not through inheritance, but through fear, propaganda, and by controlling the military. Now for our second category, rule by few or oligarchy. The Greek word oligoi just means few. So this is any government where a small, elite group of people holds all the power. This small group's power can come from a few different places. It might be a military junta, which is a committee of generals who rule the country together. It could be an aristocracy, where a handful of wealthy, landowning families have controlled things for generations. Or it could be a state where only one political party is allowed and the party leaders make all the decisions. Oligarchies can be tricky because they sometimes hide inside other forms of government. A country might call itself a democracy and hold elections, but if all the candidates are handpicked by a small wealthy group of people, it's really an oligarchy. When a government is ruled by the wealthy, it has a special name, a plutocracy. This is a type of oligarchy where a country's policies are designed to benefit the rich, who use their money to influence the laws. Another type, as we said, is a military junta, which is common after a government is overthrown. There's one more specific type of oligarchy called a theocracy. The word theo means God. A theocracy is a government run by religious leaders who claim to be ruling on behalf of a god or with divine guidance. In a theocracy, the country's laws are based on the rules of a specific religion. The Vatican City, or the Pope is the leader, is a clear example. In other countries, religious leaders might have the final say over all laws and political decisions, making it a rule by the few who are religious officials. Finally, we get to rule by many, democracy. This word comes from two Greek roots, demos, meaning the people, and kratos, meaning power. So, democracy literally means power to the people. In a democracy, the citizens hold the ultimate authority. The government isn't a separate thing that rules over the people. The government is the people. But just like with monarchies, there are two different ways for this to work in practice. The first type is a direct democracy. This is exactly what it sounds like. All citizens vote on all laws directly. If the town needs a new stop sign, everyone meets and votes on it. If they are deciding whether to go to war, everyone votes on it. The most famous example was Ancient Athens. This system is great for small groups. Your class could be a direct democracy when you vote on where to have a pizza party. But can you imagine 330 million people in the US trying to vote on every single law? It's just not possible. That's why most democracies today are representative democracies, which are also called republics. This is the system we have. Instead of voting on every law ourselves, we elect representatives, people like senators, members of Congress, mayors, and a president, to go and make decisions for us. We give them our power, and they govern on our behalf. The key to this system is accountability. If we don't like the job they're doing, we have the power to fire them at the next election and hire someone new. So what is the United States? Our official description is a constitutional republic. Let's break that down. We are a republic because we elect representatives to make laws for us. We are not a direct democracy. We are constitutional because our entire government is limited by a written document, the Constitution. This document is the supreme law of the land. It sets up the rules for our government, and, most importantly, it includes a Bill of Rights that protects our individual freedoms from the government. So we've covered who rules. But there's a second, equally important question. How much power does the government have? This isn't about who is in charge, but about what they are allowed to do. Think of it as a power meter. On one side, you have governments that control everything. On the other side, you have governments that are very limited. This gives us two new labels, authoritarian and democratic. And here's the key. A monarchy, oligarchy, or a democracy can be authoritarian. An authoritarian system is one where the government has total or near total control. The state and its leader are seen as more important than the individual citizens. You'll see this in absolute monarchies and dictatorships. In these systems, there are no real personal freedoms. The government controls the news, jails people for criticizing them, and tells people what to believe. There are no free or fair elections, and the leaders do not have to follow the law. A totalitarian state is the most extreme form of this, where the government tries to control every single aspect of public and private life. The opposite is a democratic system, sometimes called a liberal system, as in liberty. In this model, the government's power is strictly limited, usually by a constitution. The most important thing in this system is protecting the rights of the individual. This is the system you're used to. It's defined by a Bill of Rights that guarantees your freedom of speech, religion, and press. It has free and fair elections where people can peacefully change their leaders. And it follows the rule of law, which means everyone, even the president, must obey the law. So what if you have no government at all? That has a name too: anarchy. Anarchy is the total absence of any organized government. There are no laws, no police, no courts, and no one in charge. Some people believe this is the ultimate form of freedom, where everyone just governs themselves. But in practice, it's usually a recipe for chaos. Think of a big city during a blackout with no police. Without a government to enforce rules and protect people, the strongest or most ruthless often end up taking over. It's very common to mix up forms of government with economic systems. A form of government answers, who rules? An economic system answers, how does the country make and spend money? Capitalism, for example, is an economic system based on private ownership. You can have a democratic government with a capitalist economy, like the US, or an authoritarian government with a capitalist economy. Communism is a special case because it's both a political and economic system. It's an authoritarian government where the state controls all property and economic activity. So why have we spent all this time learning these labels? Because the form of government you live under defines your entire life. It determines if you're allowed to speak your mind, if you can vote for your leaders, if you're protected by the law, and if you have the opportunity to succeed. In many systems, power flows from the top down. The government tells the people what to do. In a constitutional republic like the United States, power is supposed to flow from the bottom up. It starts with we the people. It starts with you.